Hey there, folks. I was able to sit down with some of the ArenaNet devs and ask them 7 questions about the Visions of Eternity expansion. Now, of course, since we are talking about the expansion, there are some spoilers that we will talk about throughout, so you have been warned. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Welcome into a little bit of a special video that I'm doing tonight, and I'm speaking with some of the behind-the-scenes important people who make the game that you love, Guild Wars 2. Tonight, I'm sitting down with Andrew Gray, who is the lead designer. I'm sitting down with Indigo Bach, who is our narrative lead. Also sitting down with lead world designer Nick Hernandez, and he also was the designer of the skimmer mount upgrades that we've seen here for Visions of Eternity. And rounding out the rest of the group, we have Chloe Mills, who is our lead story designer for Visions of Eternity. Welcome in, everyone.
Thank you.
Hello.
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 I do appreciate all of you guys joining me here tonight. I think this is something fun that I don't believe a lot of players really get the idea of what the background of Guild Wars 2 is. A lot of times we see all the great stuff up front, we see the promotional materials, we get to enjoy the game on a day-to-day basis. But it's interesting to take a moment to be able to talk to the people who actually live and breathe this every day. And I kind of want to just open up the floor. I have a handful of questions that I'm going to approach you guys with. I want to open up with the floor with one question that has burned in my mind ever since Castora and the idea of Visions of Eternity was announced. And that is, why did we go here? Like, what was the driving force for us to be here in Castora, getting munched on by monsters and running through a very lush jungle with a bunch of angry Inquest characters, mobs?
I'll bite for that first one. So really early on in pre-production for us, we knew that we wanted to go somewhere completely new or unexplored for Guild Wars. That was something that we've been talking about wanting to do for a while. It's definitely hard to pull off, but there was a really strong desire for us to dive into a fresh setting. That was going to be pretty different from content that we've seen recently, but also that would put new and veteran players on the same page together. But things that both of them will like. So like our long-term veterans still have plenty of lore to explore, but kind of the here and now has everybody in the same footing. And Castora pretty quickly came together using nuggets of our lore and things that we've sprinkled throughout the game to date and things that we're still brewing in the background. But we knew that we wanted to explore very specifically, and also spoilers for folks that haven't been to map 2, the Seers more, that things like that would give us a mechanism to kind of scrutinize Iskarin's history and his choices as we've been digging into some of the deeper aspects of kind of Tyria's archaic history. Iskarin's going to play a fairly central role in this story, so it gave us a really interesting avenue to introduce those concepts. And it also ended up being really complementary to the Inquest story as well. The juxtaposition between the Seers and the Asura has a really kind of interesting tone to it. It really plays into our themes very well. But yeah, we'll dig into that a little bit more as things continue and the story kind of unfurls. But yeah, at the very beginning of production, we knew we wanted to do something new, and we thought we had a good story here that would allow us to do that. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that too.
Yeah, I was trying to think about like whether we should talk about like how we decided like where Castora is, because like that there was a whole conversation with that, and like because it is a new place, like it's not established in like the franchise's like lore.
Yeah.
And so like there are a lot that we fortunately have a lot of really interesting land masses on the map that already exist that we could utilize that we've never seen before. And that was a lot of like those early conversations was we have such robust lore as a foundation, but like there's still so much potential in like the world of Tyria to tell stories, to be able to do something new. And so like that was really interesting to us. And so we wanted to choose something that like a part of the world that we hadn't really been to before, and felt like remote and different, and kind of let us have like a little bit of like a clean slate, but like still able to use it to build on existing lore threads like the Seers and the Inquest and like some of the through lines of narrative that we've had for the last couple expansions with like the Astral Ward and Isgarin and all of and the Tyrian Alliance and all of that. So it kind of just was sort of like it ended up being kind of like a great avenue to be able to tell that kind of story.
Honestly, it was kind of fun to just look at the parchment, the map that we had, and see all these maps. Because like as players look at those things and they're like, I wonder what that is. Like, there's not always an answer for that initially. So actually being able to like not just select like, well, that looks like a really cool island. I wonder what could be there, but then to go in and decide what's there was a really exciting process.
Right, so you didn't put like a blindfold on Nick and spin him around a bunch and just throw a dart, and wherever it lands, that's where we're going. That wasn't a part of the design process.
Should be.
I wish.
Not this time.
It's like keep ending up in Cantha. It doesn't make sense. Like, no, that's wonderful. I know that there was once Visions of Eternity was announced. I know that I was questioning, like trying to figure out, seeing this jungle. Like I'm like, this is a. We see some of the footage of the jungle. We see some of the footage of course, Shipwrecked Strand, and it's like there was it's that very much that meme of Sheldon, like I don't need sleep, I need answers. And it's like I really did not like not knowing immediately, and I think that's also part of the excitement around it. I don't know about you, and I said this shortly before VOE was released. There's just been a palpable, I think that's the correct word to use. Palpable? Yes, palpable, like excitement about the game. And to your point, Chloe, I love the idea that it was a clean slate, that it was this almost brand new introduction, because I felt that, honestly, I felt that very much when SOTO was released. Of course, we finished up the Dragon Saga, and that was like essentially a brand new step into a new adventure. And I loved the kind of like risk of taking away from what has been the normal cadence, and now we're going to new adventures, and now we're exploring Janthier, and now we're on an island that is nothing but pirates, and it's awesome. It's great. So I love the design direction. That's wonderful, very much so. I will say one thing that I immediately loved, and it's something that always draws me in. It draws me into every single time that there's an expansion. I come back for every single expansion, let's be serious. But the elite specializations. Oh boy. I don't know if you guys see anything on Twitter. I've been talking about the Evoker. I love the Evoker. Yeah, just tearing into things. I love it. With us being here and going into Visions of Eternity and these kind of yearly expansions, my question is, why did we go for elite specializations now as compared to Janthier and SOTO and that? I wanted to see what your guys' take, because what was the driving force for pulling the trigger on this one?
Yeah, so I mean, you already identified a big thing. Changing the cadence for how often we released expansions made it so it was untenable to really continue to do an elite spec with the weapon, plus the profession mechanic, plus the trait line, plus all the utility, et cetera, et cetera, right? So we determined early on when we were working on SOTO, actually, that like weapon delinking was an important step here. Honestly, not just from like a how can we release this standpoint, but also just like it really opens the door for a lot more build variety for players. So it seemed like a thing that was kind of unshackling build craft, so to speak, for players, but then also would allow us to sort of determine what would be best for any given release. Would it be a weapon? Would it be an elite spec? So for SOTO specifically, since we were coming out with the weapon delinking system, basically, it made sense to also have that come out with a new weapon. So you could try a brand new weapon with all the different elite specs for the first time, right? And then, truth be told, for Janthier Wilds, we were really, really set on doing land spears. Like, people have been asking for it forever. We were really excited about adding a new terrestrial weapon for the first time in the game. And plus, like, spears, like, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but spears seem to work well with bear creatures. That makes no sense, but in our head, it worked. And I feel I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I think it does, in fact, work that bears do use spears, and that makes sense. And then, because now that we released 2 new weapons, it seemed like a really good time to kind of give people a new elite spec, like the other end of the elite spec, to try all of those weapons that you just got, plus like all of the existing ones that they already previously had with a new elite spec, kind of give them a new player fantasy to play with.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I don't think you could have put that any better, because I've talked about this every time I've spoken about elite specializations, and it's like I primarily play the elementalists. I do a horrible job at it, but I enjoy it. I have a good time. And every time that I'm changing the elite spec, or I'm changing the weapon combination, and I think that's kind of one of the biggest draws to Guild Wars 2 is the depth of build crafting that you can do. Now, of course, there's plenty of player-driven websites and things like that. I bring up Snowcrows. Snowcrows does like the highest possible DPS that you can squeeze out, and it's like picture. I'm not that type of person. That ain't me. I like the idea of there being that kind of like, here's a brand new set of elite specs all across the board, and now you get to pair it with everything else that's already been added to the game, all the new weapon combinations. I think that was such a beautiful take, and I think that's partly one of the reasons why Visions of Eternity, I feel like, has been so well received. It's like now we have more toys for the toy box, so to speak, in that regard. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Deck building is foundational to Guild Wars games. Like it has been from the start. So like I agree. I feel the exact same way. It's like giving people more toys to play with, and then the being able to mix and match things. Like in a similar vein, what we did with relics to kind of detach the special bonus effect of runes from the actual stat combo. So it's not just, well, I have to use the one that works with my stats, even though I'd really love to summon that parrot or whatever. All of these things just really give players more autonomy to play the exact like player fantasy that they want to play.
That is, in my mind, so critically important. And of course, I'm sure you guys are abreast to other MMO news and how they have, I don't want to, I think the correct term is homogenized a lot as they have grown. I mean, I look at like World of Warcraft, of course, like early on you have your classic where it was all these different tiers and all these, you could choose all these different skills. And it's like, now it's, you have 5 skills, choose them, and then that's it. That doesn't feel real to me. That's why I think Guild Wars 2 is always going to be at the highest tier of MMOs, is because I can do exactly as you said. I can play it the way I want to. And it's not necessarily wrong. Like, of course, it's something going to be better than others. Oh, yeah, of course. You can really live out that fantasy. And it's just, I loved it. And I think a lot of players have really enjoyed it. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. I've seen not only on my videos, but on Twitter or X, Twitter. It's, I don't know. That's the Elon site. There you go.
From a story and like narrative standpoint, it was really fun to be able to like do elite specs again, because like one of the goals that we had when we were thinking about like what are those elite specs going to be themed around, what are they going to be like, and like it felt like a pretty natural thing to theme them around the different factions that are a part of the Tyrian Alliance, like the core like player species and the other like factions that have joined. And so like it's really cool to be able to do that, and then like being able to like they have their own like distinct identities, but the nice thing there too is that it's kind of building on previous like the story from like Janther Wilds and like building on previous narrative, and then we can like use that like to a minor degree, but like that's a part of like that's the first thing you do when you start the story for Visions of Eternity, is like we wanted to make sure that it felt like it like was like grounded in with the rest of what's going on in the narrative. And so like when we were talking about it early on, I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to like, in the past we have done like initial story steps that's like for Janther Wilds and also Soto. I think it was based on like your race, species, whatever you want to call it. And so like I had done that for Janther Wilds, and I was like, it's a great way to get like something that feels a little more personalized to you, like your character. And as an aside, it is a great way to get people staggered, so that way they're not all entering the first story instance at the exact same time, which can murder murder
Oh, yeah.
like the server things. But basically being able to like have that like moment where you get to kind of connect more with the narrative of what your elite spec is, and it's part of the world more than just sort of being this like disparate thing that just also happens to exist at the same time. So it was really fun to be able to do that, and having like setting it up so you go like, it was really fun like choosing like, okay, where are these NPCs that you're going to go talk to, where are they going to be located? For the most part it was pretty straightforward, but like there were a couple like for the ritualist and for the conduit, like those are associated with Cantha and the Astral Ward, and so like I can't guarantee that like people have Soto or they have End of Dragons, so I can't send them to those maps. And so I had to do a little bit of brainstorming. Okay, where can I put them? Oh, well, like especially because of the narrative with like Cantha opening their borders, and like you have people coming to visit like Central Tyria, like it makes a lot of sense for like the ritualist NPC to be in Divinity's Reach. And then like I ended up putting the conduit NPC in at the German Priory in Lorar's Pass, because like with Janzir Wilds, they're sort of a little bit teaming up with the Priory, and they kind of have very like-minded interests, and so it ended up working out really well. But they're like, especially for the conduit, I was like, oh gosh, I don't know where to put this NPC, and then it was like, oh yeah, actually that'll be great, I'm sending you there. So yeah, it's cool being able to like weave like systems design type things like into the narrative. That's always fun when we get to do that. So
I was going to piggyback off of that too and say that when we have sometimes a more limited scope for these annual releases and we're trying to figure out how to get the most out of the space that we have, it's really great when we get to branch narrative opportunities into those systems, like Chloe said. So like utilizing the elite specializations and really getting to like some of the most fun I had on this expansion was Chloe and I shooting character ideas for everybody while we were getting them set up. But it's a really great example of ways that we can use every facet of our game and weave narrative into it in such a way that keeps everybody engaged. And like Chloe was saying, it gives us a chance to check on like what's going on in the rest of the world, even when the story might not be focused on those points in this exact moment in time. And that has some really interesting functions from our side. One, it's a great way to show the world constantly evolving. A lot has gone on, and we also have like a lot of moving threads in our story. So it's our way of saying like, we see everything that's happening. It gives us a way to gauge like what of these are going to get players' attention. Like, especially I think like in Janthir Wilds too with the Tyrian Alliance, similarly, we use that as a mechanism to have all sorts of little mini branching stories, and it's really fun to see players respond to those things. And like we're really passionate about, like, I mean, if you ask any dev, we all have our like passions in the Guild Wars universe. We all have our special interests, and so it's a really fun way to field what people are looking out for. Like, what are the stories that are happening in modern Tyria that players still want to see? Because even though we're over a decade old at this point, there's so much happening in the world of Tyria still. There's a lot of stories we want to tell. So like the Tyrian Alliance, the elite specializations, those are all really cool ways that we can continue to tell those stories and continue to field out new stories in that space. So it's really fun.
I would imagine is so difficult as a dev, because you have to, of course, keep veteran players happy. You got to keep the people who've been here since day one. But if you're going to evolve and draw in new players, having them come in and not be completely overwhelmed with 10 years of story crammed into like one mission, I think you guys have done a beautiful job with that. Honestly, legitimately, it's such, I talked about it as like one of the high points of like the intros to the expansions, that you don't feel left behind, I think is what was the big key there, at least for me.
That's validating.
Yes, it is. But yeah, it's always a difficult challenge, right? Because like there is so much history, and like both with the lore, but also just like the events that you, the commander, have gone through over time if you have played all those. So like it is an interesting balance trying to make sure that like it is still somewhat accessible for people who are jumping in now, versus somebody who's played all of it. And so like that's something that we have spent a lot of time talking about, like early in the process when we're deciding how this, like what the story is going to be like and everything, because and like basically kind of where we've settled, at least for like Visions of Eternity, is like it's nice to be able to have the Inquest as like the like antagonist here, because like you're probably going to know who the Inquest are on some level. Like you like they're in the base game. Like you don't have to have played like this, that, or the other expansion to know what is going on there. And so that's a really helpful boon to kind of help like anchor things that you might be less familiar with. Like you may not entirely know who Asgaran is if you haven't played SOTO or Janther Wilds, but like you can kind of infer some things, but you have at least these like anchor points like the Inquest and like Ritlock and things like that kind of are like, oh yeah, I know what that is at least, like, and so I'm not like completely overwhelmed and I have no idea what's going on. And I think it also helps like the having a story that is like somewhat contained within that expansion also helps with that, because like you don't have to have like all of this prior context from the last 10 years to know, especially like that's the other reason like going to Castora is great, is like you don't have to know all that lore because there wasn't. So
this is this new thread. This is where you of course all of that did happen, all that information is there. But if this, and again, the entry point, because I'm seeing a lot of players and people on multiple sides, like New World, unfortunately, and with their current situation. And I like even trying to make a point, like I've seen a lot of people who are coming from New World, even before I recently made a video about it, and it was very well received. Before I even made that video, I was getting people who were like, hey, I'm coming from New World. Yeah, like thank you. I'm trying to understand this game and I'm trying to get into it and all that. So there is that drive, but it's that fine balance. It's that really fine balance of being interesting enough that it's going to keep players wanting to play, but then not demolishing them with all the systems and the history. It's again, I commend you guys. You guys have probably a lot more patience. I got 3 daughters. This is a lot more patience than I think that I can even deal with. So I give you guys credit where credit is due.
Yeah, speaking of the new players, I just want to give a shout out to our community. Like we are blessed with probably the nicest community in online gaming. Like, and I'm not even exaggerating. I'm not even just saying that because I work here. Like they're kind. They care about new players having a good experience. Like when we've had influxes of players, like when we released on Steam, they were all in the early zones, welcoming all the new players, throwing parties for them. So like big shout out to our players for like, so the newcomers who are coming are being greeted with open arms and a very helpful bunch that are helping them to get their bearings in Tyria.
Honestly, and I think I've like, I don't know if I've necessarily said it. I probably put it on a plaque if I did, is that having a great first impression makes all the difference, especially in the MMO community, in my opinion. In my experience, I absolutely agree with you, Andrew. 100%. Like it's it's legitimately one of the nicest places and most welcoming places where people just genuinely want to be there. They want to support. They want to help. They want people to enjoy the game as much as they do. But it's never in a forceful manner, I think is the way to put it. And it's wonderful. You don't find that nowadays. So with the Inquest, of course, this is not a new enemy. And in my opinion, this is one of the like key features for me, at least for this expansion, for me being excited about the expansion, because again, with Secrets of the with SOTO, Secrets of the Obscure, having the Cryptus as the primary, we'll say, antagonist, that was okay. That's something new. And again, we're trying to break away from the dragon cycle. That's like, I completely understand. Janther Wilds, we saw a revisit of the Titans. We had the echoes of the Mersat. We had Titans, which again, I just recently replayed through Guild Wars 1. I'm sorry that last mission, it drove me insane. It drove me insane. Anyway, my build was horrible. Don't worry. It wasn't the game design. But seeing the Inquest appear as the primary, we'll say, apparent enemy, because I'm not. I know you guys aren't going to tell me nothing, but apparent enemy where we're at right now. I will say that it was one of the more grounding and more exciting aspects of going into Visions of Eternity and knowing that this is like somewhat of a familiar foe, a force that's been kind of in the background, and now they're in the prime light. How did the ArenaNet team, how did you guys come to the decision that that's the one that's the thread we're gonna pull on, that's the enemy that we're gonna make for this game?
Yeah, we had at the start of production debated a couple of options that we wanted to do for the antagonist, but kind of like Chloe was getting at before as well, is we really wanted the enemy of this expansion, following kind of the experimental cryptis of Soto and revisiting the Titans, we really wanted this expansion and the enemy of this expansion to be very grounded in Presenteria. So we really wanted it to be an organization that players were already going to be very familiar with, and that's still really relevant to modern happenings. And this would, like Chloe said, one, really ground the story back on modern Tyria. We introduced the Tyrian Alliance to kind of start fielding through, kind of like I was talking about, like what's going on in the world, how are all these cultures reacting to everything that's happened recently. And Rad Assume is a lens that we haven't looked through enough lately, to be honest. With the Asura, I'm like, what's happening there? What are they experiencing? What have they experienced over the last couple of years? Well, there's been so much going on. I guess there's still Inquest representation on the Tyrian, or not the Tyrian Alliance, the Arcane Council. That doesn't sound like the best idea. It's a very long-winded way to get to the Inquest. But that pretty much just like we also felt that focusing on a really well-known villain is going to help ground us in a new part of the world as well. So like while Castora was going to be really new for players and they would be diving into new lore and new groups of people and really establishing a new part of Tyria that we haven't explored, doing that with an enemy that is grounded continues to keep it relevant to what's happening in modern Tyria. It continues to show the world growing and moving, and that our actions and kind of this mission that we're on has an impact. But even though we were going to be focusing on a very established enemy force in our game, and the Inquest, even though they've kind of been in the background, like they're a very nefarious and ever present, and they've been in content from across all of our game. It doesn't mean we can't establish a new character in that space, and kind of using that as an inspiration. And I don't want to spoil anything for folks that are still catching up, so maybe I'll leave that there. I'll see how folks are feeling. But when we were diving into this villain, we really did a kind of deep look at all of our villains in the game to date, and kind of had a lot of really meaningful conversations about like what their goals were, what they were trying to achieve, what would make sense kind of as a result of everything that's happened recently for a character like the one in our game and to get to the position that he's in. But a lot of passion and collaboration and very heavy workshopping over the last year got us to where that landed. And we're really excited for players to continue to learn with that. But I could TED talk about the Inquest for way too long. But new characters and old, we reintroduced Kuda, and as our core players know, she's a really frightening person. We have Seb, Mr. Teeth. The Inquest lets us talk about like Rad Assume and the Arcane Council. There's just like, when we landed on that as a villain, and we were like, wait a minute, there's actually so much to work with there, that it just kind of bloomed. And it's been so inspiring to see like everybody on our team like really hone in on this story, and it's just made us, we've been so thrilled. It's been really fun to work on top to bottom. We love our mad scientist mice.
If I could also chime in, I think that like there's also a cultural element with the Inquest and kind of a current world presence element that I think really worked out with them for us in general with Castora, right? Because through every expansion that we've had so far, we've been seeing and discovering more and more individuals with power. And like in Corteria, the Inquest were inherently the ones that thought that they were the best of the best, the smartest, the most powerful, essentially. And so as each expansion has come through, right, like you've got End of Dragons showing that the Cantons exist with Jade Tech, and that is something that is potentially a higher step above what the Inquest were doing. And then you had like Soto with wizards and magic, and a Seer that has the ability to just create anything with the magics that he has available to him. And so I think that one thing that also really kind of shined with the Inquest in general and gave us a lot of opportunities with was like, what would their like overarching goal be, not just with like their leadership, but as an overall collective. And Castora really gave us a place where we could showcase like they probably are looking to become the dominant powerhouse in Tyria again, or at least are trying to find a way to really put themselves back on the map essentially as a collective. And so it's like, what does that look like after they, you know, have seen what happens with Canton Tech And the inklings and discoverings that are happening from this new leadership with Vlox and Seb and Kuda, right? Where there's this potential treasure trove space that is Castora to really give them an upper edge over everyone else. Does that make sense? That word's good?
Oh yeah. Oh, that was fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I at least speak from my perspective, and again, going into it, being excited. I think the comparison, which you said earlier, Indigo, of going to a brand new place, going to Castora, going to this island that was thought to be essentially like shrouded from Este was a myth at that rate. Nobody really thought that it actually existed, and you're bringing in this very real, this very ever-present force into it. So it's like, that's the introduction. That's the connection, the swing into. And Nick, to your point, you can the Inquest, of course, always drip with the idea that they are the most important, the most intelligent, the very best of the best. Which, I mean, constantly that as a commander, yeah, we did what we had to do. But the idea of it is that it shows that there's a layer of motivation, a layer of depth that I think that really is shining very well here in Visions of Eternity, because I mean, outside of being an Azura and going through the initial quest, now correct me if I'm wrong, I don't really know if there's really too much diving into it aside from the core story that we would have, and then Living World Season 4, where we had some of the shenanigans with them and Sandswept, I believe. And
yeah, and Damien of Corna too. They were there as well.
Not willingly.
Fair.
But that's kind of the idea in that regard, that they have been present, and I love that idea. And it's like, now this is where they're like, we need to step up. We need to be, better than what we are. And now under the new commander, under Vlox, which, love that character design. Calm, collective. I won't get into too much more because, again, for some of our friends who may or may not have already gotten into it, very well done. I'm loving the direction. I'm loving the Inquest as the enemy. Oh my goodness, it's fun. It's fun.
Also, I'm gonna take a page from Calco and hydrate, because if I'm going to answer this question, it might be long-winded. So apologies.
Talking about how we've been doing the yearly releases, of course, with Soto into Janthier and now into Visions of Eternity, what did we learn? What steps were important for your progression into these design choices, into the expansions? I think that's because as a player, I see it. We see the changes, we see the implementations, we see that you guys are listening, which is fantastic. That's that good communication between players and developers. But what pieces specifically did you pick up as you were going through these expansions, and how do they apply to that of Visions of Eternity?
Yeah, so for like story in particular, it's, I mean, whenever we put out a release, right, like there's always like stuff that we can do better. There's lessons that are learned. We're trying new things. Things may not always go like exactly like how we hoped, or like just stuff happens. And so like it is very important to us that we listen to player feedback, because we are ultimately making the game for players, not ourselves. It's for everybody. And so like that is something that we're like really tuned in on. And so like over the course of the last like couple expansions, like it's been something that we on the story team have talked a lot about, of like, okay, how can we improve on certain things? So like as an example, like players very loud and clear about like, okay, I don't like the story objectives that like are, say, like do X number of events to fill the objective bar.
The green bar.
Understandable. Like the reason that like that type of objective has existed is that like that like the design goal there was like, when you have open world steps, we're able to use the open world steps to breadcrumb players through the maps and like see the map content, the non-story map content that exists there, and kind of be like, what about this? Like, do you want to engage with this content? But it also like can like help blend those like narratives together, like the narrative of the Golden Path, but also like the narrative, like the overall world building that we're like showing in an expansion. I think that like it is, you know, like, it's also something that like from the dev perspective is like a pretty low scope thing to do. And so like those two goals combined, it's like, okay, you can see how like that is the result, which like, and you know, it's good that we tried it. I think it can still work like situationally. It's not like anybody did like a terrible job or something like that, but it's like one of those lessons that we learned that's like, okay, it's especially if it's too often, or if you're not careful about how many events that it involves, or if you're not like clear enough about that goal of like, I'm trying to let you see some of the cool stuff that the map has to offer, like it can kind of, it doesn't quite hit, right? And so so like for Janther Wilds, like we were pretty aware of like recent feedback coming from Soto. And so it's like we're building on each previous release on like how can we tweak things and kind of iron out like some of those wrinkles. And so for Janther Wilds, like one of the things that we did was like we tried to cut down on how many of those there are. So I think there's one in chapter 8. I can't remember if there are any of the any in the quarterly releases because I only worked on Launch Story, so I'm going off of Launch Story because and then like in Visions of Eternity, there aren't any, but like ultimately that need for a story step that kind of serves that purpose, that need is still there. And so something that we had looked at is like, okay, what are some alternatives or additions that we can do to kind of add variety to the type of objectives that you're doing in story steps, like so the players are not feeling like it's grindy, like they have enough variety of things, or what can we do to kind of get them more engaged directly with what's happening in open world maps. And so one of the things that like I had been thinking about, I say it's we had been thinking about was like, well, we have collections as a concept, like people really like the collections as like side achievements. Like those are fun. I love those. They're fun. They're like scavenger hunts. Like they are able to insert some really interesting narrative. They get you exploring the maps. They have a lot of strengths to them. And so, but they're also kind of just, a lot of them are very buried in the achievements panel. And so like, I was very interested in being able to integrate those directly into the Golden Path because they're just a separate form of storytelling. Like, why not use them in our main form of storytelling also to kind of achieve that goal, give people something that is more, has a more obvious like purpose and focus than, okay, go do a nebulous thing until the bar is full. And it also lets us be able to insert narrative in ways that we like in different types of ways. So like it doesn't eat heavily into our VO budget to have a bunch of like lore text on the items. We can have different ways that you engage with that. And it's getting you exploring the different maps, right? And so, and the bonus too is that like collections are achievements and they're done once. And so when you replay story on like another character, that replay is now faster because you're only doing that collection once. And so like it's these sort of things that we're like we're listening to that feedback. We're trying to try new things and trying to add new novel ways to engage with story and to experience story. Now, granted, like I said, we listen to feedback. There a little bump in the road in terms of like some of the collections are maybe divided in like how people feel about them, and I think some of that is like, unfortunately, things started off on maybe a little bit on the wrong foot because of like a very unfortunate bug, which my fault, slipped through the cracks. And so like that I think added a lot of confusion. And then there's also some other things too that like the pacing and the clarity on like the hints on how to find these things. Like some people really like those. They like being able to explore. They are maybe taking stories slower. And so like by the time they get to that collection, they've already explored the map and they are well versed in like how the map is laid out. So they can be like, oh yeah, that thing I remember seeing. But for people who are trying to like beeline through story, like it's not going to be that experience. So like that is a lesson learned. So like actually this week, like I wrote up like a whole retrospective of like, okay, here's the things that went well with collections and story. Here's what we could do better. Here are my proposed changes moving forward to make that a much better experience. So like it's something that we're always like paying attention to. We're like building on the previous lessons that we have learned to try and like continue making something that like people like. So yeah, does that answer? Hopefully that answer.
No,
Kind of.
you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. I've personally loved the collection pieces. I very much. I actually took a complete detour on the story to do Captain Leo the Relentless. Love that question. I wanted the cat. The cat has a pirate hat and a bandana and an iPad. Like I needed it. I stopped everything, and I feel like it's that kind of excitement. That kind of like, okay, well, let's just go over and do this. Let's go and do that, and then you explore a little bit more of the map. And then even for the collections that were built in, like what for the skimmer right there at the gate, I think it was like what the third mission, third or fourth. It was somewhere around that neighborhood.
Like midway through like chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Yeah.
Okay, a little bit earlier. That one, going through that and finding all the different pieces, it forces that kind of like self-exploration. And then of course, Guild Wars 2's best, in one of my opinions, and a lot of other people, I'll say, I won't speak for the entire community, but the open world events that are popping up all over the place, it's the perfect way to introduce that. Okay, I'm over here looking for a skimmer piece, but I got sucked into this meta. I was doing the Hammerheart twins for, 15, 20 minutes. Okay, back to what I was doing. And I think that is part of the reason why I personally, I love the idea of the collections, and I think a lot of people do. I will speak from a player's standpoint. No matter, people are going to be unhappy regardless of what you do. I appreciate all that you guys do. There's always going to be someone who's like, no, I don't like this. This is terrible.
Yeah.
Everything sucks.
Yeah. I mean, my goal is ultimately like, how can I make this a positive experience for as many players as possible? Because I know that I cannot satisfy 100% of players, but like I want to make sure that like, that experience is just as good for players who are diehard story people versus somebody who's just like, yeah, okay, I'll do story, I guess, because it should never be like it shouldn't be a sucky experience. And so
Right.
yeah, that's I mean, that was ultimately a lot of the inspiration for like the collections is like we have these really cool maps with really cool content, like let me go show you what the open world team has made because it's really cool. And so like having collections to go kind of wander around lets you like be able to explore stuff that you might not have otherwise seen. And story is very good at like leading people from point A to point B to point C. And so I think that works really well in the context of Castora, which like the map artists like knocked it out of the park with how pretty the maps are. Like, so good.
Sure did.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't regret doing collections, to be clear. Like I think they are the right move. It's just that when you try something like a little bit new, like I mean, collections are not new, but integrating collections into stories is a little new. When you try something new, like there's a little bit of stuff that you kind of have to iron out. And I'm confident that we can do that. Like there's a lot of stuff already coming for the 3-week build to improve a lot of that and fix some of those bugs that haven't already been hot fixed. So stay tuned, I guess.
Because I think that like very similarly to Chloe's experience, like I can't speak for all of the open world similarly how Chloe can't speak for all story because I mainly worked on launch for JW and launch for SOTO and launch for VOE. But what I can say is that similarly, we also take a lot of the player feedback into consideration, as well as like the elements of the game that we could potentially improve upon. So like when we looked at SOTO, when we released SOTO, right, at that point, we decided to make a firm stance of not including renown hearts in the expansion for the first time in a while, mainly because of the fact that we were getting some player feedback around the usage of renown hearts and how they kind of felt more like fillery than anything else. And so we relied a lot more on the use of dynamic events and content, as well as metas to really make those spaces feel truly alive, which I think for SOTO worked out really well. And similarly to what Chloe was saying with story, right? Like with every single release, we are paying attention to what the players are saying, and we are doing our best to kind of absorb that feedback. And so with JW, what we decided to do was take another look at the hearts, because there were some people for SOTO that were like, wow, we kind of miss hearts. And there were some points during the feedback that we received from the maps where it's like there were areas that felt potentially a little empty. And it was mainly because of the fact of like, oh, well, if you just waited like 1 more minute, you would have gotten that event, which is really one of the core goals of Hearts is to, originally, it was to hold people in specific areas so the dynamic content can show up for them and they can play through it. And so we took another look with JW at the Renowned Hearts, and we were like, well, how can we improve upon some of the overall player pain points with that? And that's how we got the tiered Renowned Hearts that we used to kind of integrate into JW. And then along those lines as well, right, with Visions of Eternity, we took another look at that and we are like, okay, well, here was our swing at it. What was the feedback that we received from players around those things? And how can we potentially improve upon those systems, or what are the areas in which we can kind of leave as is? And so with that, with Visions of Eternity, right, we expanded it in some areas in terms of like the content usage, some of the ways that like players get to engage with them, the overall balancing, things like that. And then along those lines as well, right, we took a look at how players really appreciated specific areas of content and specific maps. And we're like, well, here were the goals for those things. We can see that like these specific player types really appreciate when we do X, Y, and Z things. How can we kind of take those goals and incorporate them to our overall sort of like standards to ensure that we are setting not just the team up for success, but like the overall like open world for success. And so we looked at some of the stuff that were happening with areas like Lowland Shore and like Skywatch Archipelago before that. And we took a lot of the player like positive feedback. So like, I really like this area, but it'd be nice if we also had like a big piece of content, right? Like people really love Lowland Shore, but one of the biggest pieces of feedback was like, they wished that there was a big stable piece of content, like a meta or world boss. And they were feeling like Bog Queen was close to that, but you know, Bog Queen was never set up with that as an overarching goal. And so with Visions of Eternity, one of the kind of overarching goals that we had there was like, well, let's try to take the best parts of the last two expansions and see how we can kind of balance out our time, our scope, and our like overall team bandwidth to help make sure that we're hitting on all of these goal sets really effectively. And that's how we were able to do like a world boss in map 1 alongside all the explorative elements, and a meta in map 2 alongside all the explorative elements. And so our kind of hopes there are that, like, similar to story, right, we want to try to make everybody enjoy it to some extent, even though we know that we're not going to piece everybody. And so kind of one of our overarching goals that we've learned and kind of grown with is like the diversity of options is really beneficial, and trying to find ways to make sure that every map has a little bit of something that players might like can really set them up for success. Now, did I do words good? Did that make sense? Okay,
that make complete
You always
sense.
do words good, Nick.
Thank you, Chloe. Appreciate it.
No, and I think one of the biggest points that I like to talk about, especially when I'm describing this game, like we'll say, like, I talk to other content creators, I talk to other communities outside of just Guild Wars 2, and one of the biggest features that I love telling people about is, of course, the dynamic events, like the open world events. Just you're going around, and I don't know about you, like, I have a problem staying focused on a single damn task. So that, like, I'm just going along, okay, I'm over here because this little flashy button said that I need to go over this way. And now I got roped into a world boss, or now I got roped into this meta event. And I think that is one of the best things that I've seen, because I do agree. Like, I love the aesthetic of Lowland Shore from JW. I'm going to start saying that now because that was cool. I liked it. But I loved the idea of having the aesthetic. I mean, every section of that I loved. And then it's like the Ball Queen was cool, but it didn't feel like it had the same, we'll say, scope as compared to dealing with Decima and Greer in Janthier Century. Like, it's like that one felt like, holy crap, the whole map is like, it's raging because these two are here. Now we have to deal with them, and it's a large coordination. And I love to see that was taken into consideration moving into Visions of Eternity, because I think it did it very, very well. I did want to talk about it, and I'm very glad that you brought up, Nick, is because out of what we've discussed in talking about Visions of Eternity and the choices of the Inquest and the choices of coming to Castora and creating almost essentially some out of some pieces of lore that we've had, just laying around, I'm picking this up and I'm making this great expansion. How did you come to the design choices? Now, this is very important to me, at least, of both Shipwreck Strand and Starlit Weald, because See, and I always feel like I'm saying that wrong. Weld, right? It is wheeled. Okay. I every time I say it, I'm
For
like,
Now you're making me paranoid that
Yeah,
I'm
see,
what
saying
it's
it wrong.
worth,
just me.
I say both. I swap between both all the time. My brain is like potato, potato, right? Like
you know what I'm talking about. Move on.
language expression.
Okay. All right. How did that become to the forefront of the open world? I love the maps. Holy crap, the maps are great. I can't talk about them enough. They're just like they're so immersive. It feels alive. I just want to get that before. Okay, I'll stop question. Go ahead.
You can. I mean, honestly, like I feel the same way. I think the team knocked it absolutely out of the park. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of them are gonna be watching this, so it's like you did it. See, you did it. Great job. Like legitimately, they did an absolutely amazing job, and I do my best to try to tell them that every single day because it does take a lot of effort to make these things, and we don't always get it right, and there's a lot of decisions that we make that sometimes work out and sometimes don't work out, and sometimes specific decisions that we make like in a silo work pretty well, but then like together it's like, oh, that's creating a pain point, and then so we try to fix it. But I mean, the team has been super diligent all throughout the development and even post release to try to help make sure that players are properly set up for success and they're happy and excited with the stuff. So yeah, please feel free to gush. I could gush for hours about how great of a job I think the team did as well. But yeah, to your question, I mean, this is something that I've thought a lot about too, and I think that like it kind of boils down to four overarching points from my perspective. I think the first one was like the decision for those two maps originally just kind of came to us naturally as we discussed the setting and the story, right? Like similar to what Indigo mentioned earlier with like wanting something new and a place that was unexplored. What we kind of figured out was that like as we walked through what the story would look like, these answers just kind of started to unfold naturally for us, right? So it's like a lot of Shipwreck Strand, our beach map, came from the desire to give players the ability to like get their bearings, right? Because we were landing on Castora for the first time, and it is the shoreline of a island continent. Which, by the way, like we had I want to say like 45 minutes of one meeting where we were all discussing like, is it an island? Is it a continent? What verbiage do we use? And it was like back and forth. And I appreciate the editors and their designers because they were just like, it is this, and we were like, you know what? Locked in, fantastic. But so it's like we decided to go to Castora, and then from that we just kind of were like, well, this is a space that we know hasn't been inhabited for a very, very long time. We know that we are landing on the shore because of the way that we are getting here is through boats, because you can't get there from airship because there's magic in the sky and it's going to make you fall and crash. And so
there it is. I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
It seemed like the airship was going to crash somewhere. Okay, continue.
It would have crashed, but we were smart about
there's
it.
a reason that we go by boat, because I was like, I swear, if we do one more airship that crashes,
I ain't never getting
we can't.
But we did crash a ship, though. So
It's true.
that we did crash a ship, just not one in the air.
It sank. It didn't crash.
Tomato, right?
Yeah.
But
Okay.
oh no, please go ahead.
No. I was just following up on Chloe. I mean, technically, Chloe's got a point here. I mean, it was okay. The airship as a sentiment that has been like one. I love every time that it's brought up because it's like any chance you guys get, you guys love to destroy it and destroy an airship. I'm just gonna say that I'm gonna leave that there because I do want to hear the rest of your thoughts about Shipwreck Strand and how we arrived here and all that. I just love it. It's one of my favorite memes in this community. I love every time that I see it. Continue, please go.
All right. I mean, for what it's worth, I'll use the word destroyed. How's that?
Oh,
We
okay,
keep
that's
destroying our modes of transportation.
Perfect.
But yeah, so like we arrive on the shoreline of this like island continent that we knew was going to be uninhabited for a very, very long time, that was rich with magics. And so from there we just kind of looked at like, okay, this just kind of makes sense, right? You're on the shore, it's a beach map would be cool. We haven't done a beach map in a really long time, but we also have referential content that we can do, and so we know kind of like what worked over there, what we can improve upon in certain areas, and how we can work to diversify it. And then it kind of moved to a need for the map goals and tech to help reinforce what we already knew was going to be the right decision. And so it's like we thought a lot about like what elements would be needed to help make the map feel familiar within the context of Tyria, but like novel compared to other shore maps. Like Old Lion's Arch, Southland Cove, Samsung Isles, Saitong, etc. As well as like what the core gameplay levers we need to help make it kind of meet our current standards and quality bar. And so we found that having some form of like residence in areas that we're going to kind of live there, right? The castaways that are the Hole Gardeners and the freebooters just kind of made sense because it's like it hit on multiple narrative goals for us of like we have individuals that are there that can tell us the present story and the past story of Castora, right? Because the Hole Gardeners and the freebooters are generational ship like individuals who got shipwrecked here. And then it also allowed us to kind of tell the story of like why the inner areas are going to be more sparse with kind of sentient life because they're more dangerous, right? And so that plus some of the technical upgrades that we've gotten over the past few years, like we got a really big improvement to the system that we call water tech. Previously, I want to say before like Secrets of the Obscure, the way our water worked is that all water under our Z coordinate 000 was water. That's just like that is how we worked on water. But our wonderful engineering team gave us the ability to create volumetric water, and so it's like we could, instead of having water only at 000, we can put it up in the sky, like in a cave super high, right? Which is how we were able to kind of make the like pools in Soto maps work. It was how we were able to make the like giant flowing river down Lowland Shore work. And it is how we were able to kind of make a lot of the grotto tech and water in both of our maps work. Because with the grotto tech and with the upgrades, we were able to like inverse it. And so we saw the skimmer as the mount that we kind of wanted to utilize for this stuff. And then we were like, cool, beach map, skimmer, and underwater grottos just makes sense with a bunch of pirates and shipwrecked castaways, right? And it just fit really well with our overarching goals and themes for like we were looking at like the Goonies as inspiration. We were looking at like Atlantis, Indiana Jones, et cetera, et cetera. So like that's map one. We take those kind of core narrative elements, those decisions that we've made, the tech that we have and we utilize, and we expand upon those methods while ensuring proper integration with the through line narrative, right, from the story team to ensure that like we are kind of making this world feel well blended and alive. And so for like Starlit Weald, similarly, we thought about what it'd feel like to go inland in a space that hasn't been inhabited for a long time, or to some perceptively ever, right? Because like spoiler alert, everybody thought that this place was uninhabited and abandoned until you go deeper into map 2 and you're like, oh, there are ruins here from spoiler alert, the Seers. What? Right. And so it's like we kind of saw the dense vegetation, the overgrowth, the kind of magic, right, as strong ways to be able to sell the ancient nature of this space. And then also like it gave us a lot of opportunities for diversification of our flora and our fauna to help make this place feel novel as well. Because it's like, what's going to live in a big, giant, magically dense jungle? Probably dinosaurs, right? Like you've got your dinosaurs, you've got your large reptiles, you've got your new pocket raptors that look a lot more alien-like. And so, with Starlit Weald, we really wanted to showcase that dense vegetation, that utilization of magics, as well as just kind of better integrating the overall narrative through line. Because like map 1 has Inquest as an example, right? Like you will find an area that's dominated by Inquest. You'll find out that they have contracted the freebooters to defend specific areas of interest for them. But then when you go inland to map 2, you really start seeing the destruction that comes from them, right? And then like also you get to learn a lot more about why, like the core of why they're here, right? They're trying to dig into this Seer architecture. They're trying to figure out how to utilize not just the ley magics in this space, but the creatures that inhabit it because they're big, dangerous, and powerful. And then map 2 kind of allows us that space to showcase the destruction that the Inquest are doing with the deforestation in their like main base area, as well as their attempts to overtake certain parts of the Seer structures with the meta. So that's the expanding upon part. And I think the last note is just like, with each expansion, what we've kind of found is that like some of us are just kind of big ecological nerds. And so we also kind of get inspiration from real life. Like as an example, over the past 2 expansions, like Chloe has gone to Hawaii and Iceland. Like I went to Rainier and Costa Rica, and we were both like huge dorks when it comes to animals and plants, and so it's like we just would like go to these places and then give the art team a bunch of information and like the creature team a bunch of information about like, oh, look at like all these pictures that we took, and like or I mean like it's what's the best way to put this, like look at all these pictures that we took, and like, oh, here's some like weird random facts about like different creatures. Like every time we would brainstorm creatures, Chloe would be like, actually, here's this one dinosaur that you probably don't know about this from this one period. And then it's like, oh, you want pigs? Here's this one like pig. I mean, Chloe could probably say it better, but
no, Tracy, the map artist for map 2, like Tracy and I especially were just like kind of nerding out about like prehistoric animals, and so like the what did they end up being called? The hell pigs.
that's what we call them internally, yeah.
Yeah, they're sort of they're loosely based on entelodonts, which are not actually pigs, but like there's a lot of like prehistoric animal like inspiration, and like so we're all giant nerds, and so we were having a lot of fun with like drawing inspiration from like prehistoric animals and like weirder animals that are like endemic only to like more remote places on Earth, and being able to use that as inspiration for like how to make Castora feel like this unique place that feels very like wild and like dangerous, I guess, and very you are stepping into their territory and you better be careful, kind of a thing. Exactly. Like there's big old dinos, they're gonna eat you. So
yeah. And I think that like this time especially we took extra care with that. Like we spent multiple meetings just talking about the overall like ecology, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the term is etymology of like the entire, like all of these new creatures and how they interact with the old creatures. And so it's like trying to figure out like, okay, well, which one of these are like true predators, which one of these are true prey, which one of these are like indifferent predators, which one of these are like indifferent prey. And like that is something that we do to an extent with like all of our open world maps, but this time we had to like really dig deep because so many elements of our flora and fauna are like, we're trying to make sure super novel and feel novel. And so it's like, even to some extent, right, like the new magical jellyfish in Castora, right, like the ones underwater are somewhat different in the way that they function and interact with the world than the ones that like float through the sky, right? And so it's like there was a lot of discussion in that space as well, to ensure that we kind of just really made this place feel different, right? Like we always want to make each map feel different, but we also want them to feel grounded and realistic. It's kind of like that sci-fi thing where it's like a lot of people feel that the best forms of sci-fi have some form of like kind of grounded understanding.
Oh yeah.
For you know what I mean? Yeah. So those are the kind of like methodologies and things that we do.
I did notice actually in quite a few areas in the Visions of Eternity, like again, playing Elementalist, I'm not going in downstate as frequently, just wandering around and checking all sorts of things out. And I think that was it's fantastic to hear, by the way, that you guys are nerds. I love it. I love it because the excitement, each one of you, as you have talked about this game, is very real. And I think that's one of the beautiful things and one of the things I really wanted to capture here was to see the actual excitement that you guys have in this development, that it's Chloe fact checking everyone on everything dinosaur related. We're like, oh, let's go back. Let's go and review A Land Before Time here. And with that kind of like, it's almost like these minute attentions to detail that really are shining through. And I really want to give you guys as much credit as possible, because even going through, like as I was mentioning, I'm not getting attacked by everything, but it's also by choice, because these are, okay, this is not necessarily a natural predator. This is a, we'll say more a herbivore or a non-aggressive animal. He's there. He's not going to mess with me unless I mess with him, versus going and getting jumped by, like 20 of the raptors. Again, thank you for bringing those back. It's just, it feels so good. And it's a wonderful like comparison to know that as these design choices are happening in Visions of Eternity, growing the game through Tyria and through Guild Wars 2, is that there's these little bits of information. If you just take a moment just to look, and you'll notice, and you could pick up immediately. Now that you have mentioned it, I'm like, you know what? Like, you're right. Actually, yeah, I did not realize that everything was killing me on sight. Everything wasn't violent against me, but there are things that are very violent and do kill me often. But there's that capability, and I absolutely love it. And it's something that I definitely know needs to be highlighted.
Awesome, thank you. I mean, speaking of highlights, I just want to shout out the what we call the Armies and Encounters team, which are the individuals who create pretty much almost all of the things that you end up punching or getting punched by, right? So like all of the natural army, all of the like Inquest and their like sub armies with like the golems and the cyborg animals, all of like the Seer security measures that you end up experiencing, like I want to say like 99% of the creatures that end up punching you or you're getting punched by are made by that team, and they just did an absolutely amazing job, right? Like we had our brainstorms and we like tossed them the ideas for what kind of creatures we wanted, and then they were just able to like really knock it out of the park with how those creatures feel. And it's like making like map 2 feels a lot like magical Jurassic Park, and I think that's what we were exactly going for, and they really nailed it.
Magical Jurassic Park. Oh man, can I coin that term? Can I put that somewhere? Like, I might actually,
Sure.
I might actually, and I'll reference you. Of course, I'm not going to steal any work. No, that's definitely your tag, but I like it. That's
Yeah,
really
I don't
good.
think we own that trademark.
Nope.
It's a trademark within the game. We'll say it's within the game.
There you go.
Ownership where ownership is due. But I really do want to kind of capitalize the last question, which is what can players expect for the rest of the expansion? And of course, any potential hits. I know that you guys obviously can't say anything, and I know the rules of the game. I know NDAs and all those fun shenanigans, but like a lead, a saying, a state. I don't know. We'll go from there. So
Yeah, one of the big changes that people will see from the 2 most recent expansions is again, to the whole hearing players' feedback. Like one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we got was the individual QRs. Like, while it tells a good story overall, we're kind of cut into too small of bits. So we made the decision early on to condense our story to just QR2 and QR3, and have QR1 focused exclusively on systems improvements and encounters type stuff. So like a raid encounter, the raid strike unification system, and that sort of stuff. And we hope that that'll be a better content delivery system, I guess. Like, you just get a little bit more meat on your bone for each of those individual story releases. It also gives us, the people who are making that stuff, a little bit of a breather before when you're just going right back into another giant content focused release. So it's better for the team as well. As far as what else to expect, like you'll expect the typical stuff that we've been putting out in our releases recently. There's going to be a couple raid encounters. There's going to be a fractal, all with challenge modes. There's going to be tons of rewards, including a bunch of legendary equipment, new relics. I'm sure I am forgetting something, but we actually have a really detailed roadmap on our website that people can reference, and it tells you like release by release when to expect everything.
yeah, speaking on personal experience as someone who is going through like my personal 9 to 5, I'm going through my busy season right now, and I am just essentially glued to a computer screen from 8 in the morning till about 5 in the afternoon. So I completely get having that breather and making sure that the dev team, because I feel like that's something that doesn't really get talked about enough, or at least showcased enough, is yes, it is great to have constant new content for a game that you love. Absolutely. But there's people behind it who are putting in countless hours developing this game, giving the expectations that you guys have, and these things take time. And I love that you guys push back the release, because I believe originally Visions of Eternity was supposed to be in August, but there was a decision made to say, hey, let's scoot it back a little bit. Let's give you guys a little bit more room. And look at it. It paid off, obviously. Good gracious, you give the developers a damn chance. Sorry. I won't dig into that one too much. But it is.
I mean, I will say that like I work where I work for a reason, and that is because they respect us as people, as human beings that have needs. Like a lot of studios talk about no crunch culture, but ArenaNet like actually follows that tenet. Like it's critical. Like, we want our people to be happy. We want them to have lives outside of work, to see their families and all that stuff. So, yeah, It's great. It's a great place to work, and I do think that people do their best work when they are happy. So like I think that that shines through with the quality of our work.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to like what we were saying before too, of like listening to that feedback and like um trying to like learn, taking lessons from like the last two expansions and trying to make sure that like we are doing the work necessary, like the setup necessary, and the in a sane way that lets us have like the payoff that we are trying to do, and doing it in a way that is like sane for everybody and is not burning them out. Because like we care a lot about that, like we want it to like hit really well too, and so like it's more of that refining and stuff, and so like yeah, like having that extra little bit extra time for launch like definitely made a huge difference. But like there's also a lot of like things that we are like measures that we're taking to try and ensure that like the QRs are also going to hit well, and like how like strategies that we can do to like set ourselves up for success in the best way possible. So I'm excited, like I think we can do it. Yeah.
Now, real quick, because I know that we were wrapping up, and I want to make sure that I don't eat up too much of your guys' evening, because it is still technically Thursday. We have Friday tomorrow. Out of everything, out of the entire expansion, I'll expand off of Chloe. One of the questions that you sent me. What was your favorite part of Visions of Eternity? And it could be anything. It could be the elite specializations. It could be the map design. It could be a specific cutscene. Indigo, I'll start with you. I want to hear your thoughts. What was your like? That's it. That's doing it for me.
Can I say two things specifically?
No,
'Cause
you
I have
cannot.
a serious
It's
answer.
only one. No, okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm probably very biased towards the one that almost doesn't count, which is Vlox's introduction. That was the work of the one of our writers did such a beautiful job with that dialogue, and like from the casting to the animation, like what a powerful introduction. And like we were even like players are talking about how like, oh, when I heard that voice, like I was floored. I'm like, you should have heard us in our first cinematic sync when we heard it for the first time with Jason's VO. It was just so powerful and so immediately validating to all of us, where we were like, holy shit, like this thing that we're trying to do is working, and it sounds so cool, and everybody's responding to it so well. So it was very cool. And continues to be just like one of our very favorite things. A lot of Vlox fans at the studio. I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
players totally get it. We're really excited for them to kind of see how that progresses. The second sneaky thing I was going to sneak in would be the choya, but
the pineapple choya.
Yeah, it's kind of hard
beautiful.
to choose. Like Vlox, choya, they're both up there.
That ate up some time for me doing that damn great choya race, and I kept failing, and I realized that the jump actually moves you further than the roll a little. Anyway, not my failings. I love the choya. That was great. Nick, I want to hear your part. What was your? That's it. That's my favorite thing.
Well, actually, can I add one thing to what Indigo was saying about
Mhm.
blocks? Because while it's not my favorite, I think that I just remember like during the initial cinematic meetings where we had gotten some of the VO back and they were still kind of doing the storyboarding. So it's like, for those who don't know, storyboarding is just like a bunch of doodles and like a flipbook style. And so like they were doing the flipbook style stuff, and while we were hearing the VO, and that I was just like, oh, the cinematics and teams are cooking.
Yeah,
because it's like
yeah,
it was
like
that
Goosebumps,
impactful.
like oh,
Yeah. With like doodles and just hearing those voices and like seeing what the doodles were doing, I was like, wow, this is
So
gonna hit
damn
hard.
believable too. Like I immediately was like, yeah, I kind of trust him, and then it's like, whoa, wait a second, like that's not okay. Like I'm just letting my guard down immediately. It's just like, damn, that was a good line. That gave me chills. Like, no, wait, this is how you end up in a van. Don't do this. What Vlox obviously is a highlight, but what was your mark? What?
So it's hard. I'm gonna give a little bit of a cop-out answer because it's like as the open world lead, I like every piece of content that is put in front of me is like absolutely amazing, and there were multiple pieces that like definitely surprised me, and I was like, whoa, like how did you even get our engine to do that? What do you mean? But like I don't know. I think that like everything in the open world is absolutely amazing in one way or another. Like it all connects very well in my perspective. From my perspective, like they're all puzzle pieces that make a beautiful picture. So that is my like world side of things answer. But I guess like for me individually, I'd say that like the standout moment for me was the skimmer, but I think that's mainly because there's like a personal element for it to with it for me because like it's the first time like I've touched mount stuff in the past, but it's the first time that I really got to like dig deep into that system and play around with it and work with it and try to find ways to integrate it into like the open world flow and look at what it looked like take where it was previously and kind of some of the areas that we wanted to improve to make players want to play with it more and getting to really dig into that system, play with those things, and then see how people felt about it, right? Like see what that was. And so for me, that was a really novel experience because like I've been doing open world for a very long time now, but I think that like getting to see that side of it where it's like getting to work with that system and then building out that system to work with like the world and the player base, I think was for me the best part. Um, does that answer the question, or was that kind of like a side answer to the question?
No, that was beautifully put, honestly, because I know that the skimmer and I apologize on my behalf of not asking enough about it, given how important it is to this expansion and to the world design. Of course, mounts and I'm just going to be completely biased in that the mounts in Guild Wars 2 completely topple every mount in every other MMO. I'm just going to say it. We're all thinking about it. I know that there's been talk, oh, look at us, we can fly on a rage. No, okay, that doesn't matter. I will say that the skimmer has been such a well-received introduction, and I liked how on the yearly cadence of with these expansions, we've got to expand upon a system that's already fantastic. The mount system is amazing, and now it's like we get to add an additional layer. And I've loved having the skimmer. I love the underwater diving and going through all these grottos and Shipwreck Strand. That was again part of the stress of finishing the Leo the Relentless achievement or the collection. That was finding where he was. Tested myself in a number of ways. But it was great having that mode of transportation and feel like it was an important element to the story and to the world that you had created. So absolutely, that was a great answer.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll just also give one shout out to one of our designers. His name is Carl McLean. The skimmer would not have been anywhere near as good as his on launch without him as well, right? Like he was the one who did all of the Warclaw work in JW, and so his work kind of figuring out foundational answers and prototypes really helped to make sure that we were set up for success. So just want to give him a shout out too. I mean, the entire team did an absolutely amazing job, but getting his guidance and assistance really helped out a lot.
No, of course. Chloe, what was your mark? Your moment, your element that really stood out for you with this expansion?
I guess like I also have like two options. I've been trying to decide.
No one has had a single moment. Every person we've talked to is like, well, if I had to narrow it down to the top 50, I would look at the first two. Like,
I think at least one of them is Seb. Like he's such a little gremlin. And like he sort of came about like Indigo and I like way early on when we were sort of like I think we went out for like brunch or something and we were just sort of like talking on the side when we were kind of like we had like there were inklings of like what we might do and I think we had decided it was Inquest and I was like and so like he sort of like I really like the direction that he went. The writers did such a good job writing him to be like pardon my French, but a little shit. And
whoa, this is a Christian channel no, absolutely. No.
The monetization.
But like he was so much fun to like any time that like he was involved in like the story or like even in the open world a little bit, like it was a lot of fun designing a lot of the story stuff around him. I did the Seb encounter, like I designed that fight and it was really fun being able to think up like his abilities and what is happening in that fight, like in a way that strengthens that narrative. Like you're seeing like how cruel and kind of nuts he is, and then the decision to have creation, well, for spoilers, but for creations 5 and 7 to turn on him, he's like, not me. Like we had so much fun with that. So like, yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then like from more of like a like stuff I worked like more specifically stuff I worked on standpoint, like I always try and like challenge myself to like learn something new or expand upon something. And so one of the things that I am proud of making is the absolutely insane under the hood instance that is the ships. I want to write a blog post about this at some point, kind of detailing some of the like technical details, because it's something. It is many moving platforms moving on rails with a bunch of stuff attached to those moving platforms, and like that's not easy to do in like a networked game. And there's like just a bunch of stuff going on because I really wanted like the start of the expansion to like start with a bang of like, we're going to this cool place, we're gonna travel there. I want it to feel like a big journey. And so like I had a lot of fun, like as like when we were scoping out like what are the different parts of the story going to look like, I was like, I am setting aside a big old chunk of time for this one, because I know, because like I had worked with like moving platforms and like rails before. Like I did Suan, and so like she's also a moving platform because she rotates and stuff, and I was like, okay, I've done this before, but I want to take that a little further. I want to learn more stuff. I want to like see what I can do with that. And so like that is also one of my favorite parts, is like I like trying to like push myself on doing I guess ambitious things here and there. So yeah,
bit of personal growth while you're also getting to help along with the whole story. I'm 100% for it. I always just I like the idea of being better than the person that you were yesterday. That's something that I tell myself, I tell the kids, you know, like that's something that I feel is like very important. And again, is seeing that trait and that quality in a developer is going to be, that's immense. That's what you want. You want that, like, let's grow, let's learn, let's figure these things out. Poor Canuck is all I will say. Like, I feel like every time we interact with him, he gets something bad happens to him, and he keeps hanging around us. So I guess it's his fault.
I think that is ultimately Andrew's fault, because he noticed that the ship that we were using had a really cool animation of breaking apart, and so we're like, well, guess we're doing that because that's so cool.
May not be in the air, but it's going down. Ready to go. All right, Andrew. I leave this to you. What was your moment? What was your favorite aspect of Visions of Eternity?
So I don't think I'm allowed to pick favorites. I think it would, cause too much controversy. But I actually, the thing I like the most is the integration of the various things. Like, I love how complementary the skimmer is to the open world. I love how much, as you explore the open world and you come across all that content, it complements the story. Like you hate Seb more because you see the horrible things he's doing in the open world content. So then when you get to the point in the story, spoilers, you can fight him, you're like, yes, this guy has it coming. So like, it's kind of like and I love how we integrated the elite specs into the story, which we hadn't, we kind of loosely done before, but not to the level that we did here. So like, it really feels like we have a lot of amazing pieces, and where they kind of connect together, I also feel like the team really just nailed it, because they really, truly, every part of the expansion is complementary to each other. If I do have to pick one thing that I want to call out, is for the homesteads, one of the pieces of feedback we got for the first one was, man, this stuff's cool, but I wish I could customize it more. I wish I could tear this whole house down. So they actually built that entire map out of pre-placed decorations. So like, pretty much things outside of like critical geometry are things that you can remove, replace, put somewhere else if you want to. So like, I was just impressed at how far they could push.
Oh, damn good. See, I'm allowed to cuss too. YouTube's monetization has changed slightly. They don't actually demonetize on that. Got to stay up front. But it's just, in my opinion, I give all the credit to you guys. This expansion has been a hell of a good time. It has been so good. And this is just and that's what I keep out. It's like, this is just the start. Like, we still have so much going on. And I think it resounds well, not only with the player base, but the feedback that I'm seeing on the game itself, in other people's, on other content creators. Everyone is all basically on the same page. Like, what's the term? The one, you guys hit it out of the park, or I don't know. I'm not up on the younger lingo. It slaps, I think, is the one my oldest says. I know I'm aging myself. I have a 10-year-old. Did you guys have any final words before we sign off? Again, I've eaten so much more of your time. I know that you guys wanted to talk about, and I'm happy to be the voice of it. I do appreciate you guys hanging out a little bit later. But did you guys have anything else that you wanted to add? Any closing points?
This isn't a closing point, but I do feel inspired to say, after Seb was mentioned by both Chloe and Andrew, just as a fun anecdote for him, very early on when we were working on Seb, because we knew we knew that we wanted to do something very different, so to say, with Vlox, and that he had a big path ahead of him, which we'll get into in QR. We knew we needed to give players something and someone that they could hate, that they could genuinely hate. And Vlox is not that. So Seb was going to be that. And very early on, like, I remember Chloe messaging one of our chats, and she was like, I need you guys to see what I've done with this character model. And she just sent it, like, zoomed in on his smile.
I can't take credit though, because that was his, like, he ended up getting a special face. That was like his original, like, composite, and I basically made him to look as, like, just, like, obnoxious as possible, like a little shark grin. And then, like, then character art was like, would you like us to make him, like, a special face? And I was like, yes, obviously. And they did such a good job. But yeah, like, he was basically born out of, like, hey, we need, like, a cool final boss, because, like, we need there to be, like, encounters that feel satisfying. And if we can't do that with Vlox, like, at launch, like it's like we need that meat. And so Seb was basically born out of
he was the punching bag. He was created to be. He's like, yeah, that's it. Like, he's straight up, he's an asshole, and everyone's going to be happy when we actually fight him. I was happy when Vlox walks away and like, oh, you take care of him. I'm like, thank God. Like, oh my God, I can finally hit this dude. No, fantastic. The characters, the world, bravo, guys. That's all I will say. I will say that is all the questions that I have right now. You guys have been wonderful, and again, I do very much appreciate you guys hanging out with me a little bit later on a Thursday evening. I'm sure you guys are very busy, and I don't want to eat up any more time. I will say I am appreciative of all the work that you guys do. I love Guild Wars 2. It's one of my favorite games. It's one of the games that I've come back to time and time again. Anytime that I have just really needed to feel kind of like grounded, back to myself, we'll say, with my MMO days. So I want to thank you for all the work that you guys do. And I'm sure that there's plenty of players out there who not only watch my stuff, but follow intently along with what you guys do, and they're grateful.
Yay. I mean, that means a lot.
You.
Like, we're ultimately making this game for, like, you and other people. So, like, it's always nice to hear.
Yeah.
And we're definitely grateful for them as well. Like I was saying earlier, it's like such a wonderful community to be a part of.
Absolutely. And I think they all feel it. I know that I feel it, and I see it every time that I log in. So I want to thank you for your time, and I will wish you guys a good night.
Yay, thank you so much.
Thank you.